Welcome to History Tea, where we spill all the rumours and gossip. You wake up in the most dangerous bedchamber in Europe, Versailles, 1676. Your pillow smells like lavender and intrigue. The sheets, probably imported from Italy, which means they're twice as expensive and half as clean as they look. You blink in the filtered morning light pouring through lace curtains. And somewhere in the courtyard, a servant faints from hunger. Another day, another scandal. Before you open your eyes fully, you remind yourself of three things. Don't breathe too deeply. The air reeks of perfume strong enough to choke angels. Don't drink anything you didn't pour yourself. And for heaven's sake, don't trust anyone wearing too much rouge before breakfast. You sit up, powdered hair slightly crooked, and the first sound of the morning hits. Gossip. It travels faster than prayer in this palace, a fluttering murmur in corridors, echoing off gold. Someone's been poisoned, someone's been blessed, and someone's pretending not to be both. The scent of burnt rose petals and animal musk tells you Madame de Montespan has already begun her morning toilette. She's the king's official mistress, and half the kingdom's unofficial obsession. Her rooms are 2 halls away, but you can always smell ambition before you can see it. You rise, stretching in your stays, and a maid scurries in with a basin of water that's definitely seen better centuries. "Good morning," she says, which is optimistic. You splash your face, the water cold and questionable, and wonder how many sins it's washed before yours. Outside your chamber, the hall of mirrors sparkles in sunlight, each reflection whispering its own version of truth. Somewhere beyond the glass, the king prays, or pretends to. Louis XIV, the Sun King. The man who made Versailles a stage and himself the only star. You're a minor courtier, not famous enough to start rumours, but just important enough to be ruined by them as well as hitting like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Your only real weapon here is survival. And that means knowing who's dying, who's lying, and who's mixing herbs in the back room. Today's gossip menu. Death by dessert. A marquise. Some say it's the Marquise de Brinvilliers, though her story's already infamous. Supposedly poisoned her father and 2 brothers for inheritance money. Paris is in a frenzy, and Versailles is pretending not to care. But the whispers have teeth. Someone mentions a woman in Paris, a fortune teller, midwife, and dealer in solutions. Her name? La Voisin. You've heard of her. Everyone has. They say she can predict love, death, and how to speed one up if the other's taking too long. You step into the corridor. Servants sweep away wilted flowers. Versailles goes through them faster than morals. The marble floors gleam, but you know better than to trust reflections here. Beneath the polish, the whole court is rotting beautifully. A nobleman greets you, fan fluttering. He leans in, perfume and sweat fighting for dominance. "Did you hear?" he whispers. "They say the Marquise confessed. Poison in the broth. Holy confession and all." You nod politely. Of course she confessed. Everyone confesses when their confessor works for the king's secret police. You murmur something vague about tragedy, but inside you're already calculating. poison in the broth, eh? Might be time to start bringing your own lunch. As you walk, the morning unfolds like theatre. Powdered men gossip about war, jewelled women gossip about each other, and servants carry trays like they're balancing the fate of France. Somewhere, the king's musicians practice. The same tune they've played for 3 years straight. Versailles runs on ritual, repetition, and rumour. It's basically Instagram, but with more lace and fewer filters. Since you're here, let's step aside. Literally, away from the tapestries and toward the pantry of death. You might think poisoners of the 17th century were crude. Oh no, they were artists. The main ingredients? Arsenic, mercury, and belladonna, the holy trinity of subtle homicide. Arsenic was the favourite, tasteless, colourless, and conveniently disguised as flour or sugar. A cook could sprinkle it like seasoning, and voila, instant inheritance. Belladonna, beautiful lady, made your pupils dilate, and your rivals die looking lovely. And mercury, well, it made your enemies tremble, drool, and go mad. The perfect revenge cocktail. But poison wasn't just for killing, it was fashionable. Bottled by apothecaries, sold by sorceresses, and blessed, sometimes literally, by priests. Some people even wore little sachets of arsenic powder in their wigs to purify the air. If you wondered why Versailles courtiers fainted so much, it wasn't just corsets. It was the chemical warfare of haute couture. And don't even get started on cosmetics. Face powder was laced with white lead. Rouge often contained mercury sulfide. Lip balm, ground pearls, and crushed beetles. Everyone glowed because they were slowly dying. So when you see a lady at court with perfect skin, remember, that's not youth. That's oxidation. Back to the main story. The king appears like the sun he pretends to be. Louis XIV glides through the corridor, trailed by courtiers like planets in orbit. You bow, and so does everyone else, a wave of synchronized submission. His golden coat glimmers, and his face, pale, waxed, and serene, reveals nothing. But his eyes flicker toward Montespan's door, and you catch it. A flash of irritation. Or is it longing? Hard to tell from a safe distance. Montespan, meanwhile, is losing her grip. You overhear her lady-in-waiting whispering that she hasn't slept, that her rivals are gaining ground, especially the quiet, pious Madame de Maintenon. That woman's prayers could move mountains. Or at least men. Rumour has it Montespan's been seeking help from certain spiritual advisors. Not priests. Not the kind you find in church anyway. You follow the crowd toward the breakfast salon. The air buzzes with talk of poisons and prophecy. One duchess jokes, "At this rate, we'll all have to bring tasters to tea." Everyone laughs. Then everyone stops laughing, realizing she's not wrong. A waiter pours chocolate, the latest exotic indulgence from the colonies. It smells divine, rich and dark, but you hesitate. There's a story going around. Someone died after drinking a cup. Coincidence? Or cautionary tale? You sip anyway. You're not suicidal, just polite. By mid-morning, the palace hums with tension. The word poison passes through lips like a shared prayer. You hear it in the Queen's chambers, the kitchens, even among the gardeners trimming Versailles' endless hedges. Everyone has a theory, a name, a suspect. And every whisper somehow circles back to the same woman, La Voisin. She's supposedly a fortune-teller in Paris, part midwife, part alchemist, part walking scandal. Her salon welcomes aristocrats by candlelight, where prayers sound suspiciously like curses. She sells love potions to desperate women and invisible poisons to the same crowd, depending on how their relationships turn out. Someone nearby murmurs, "They say Montespan herself went to see her." You don't gasp. You're too good for that. But your pulse skips. Montespan, the king's mistress, mixing with fortune-tellers and poisoners? That's not gossip anymore. That's treason by perfume. You glance around the room. Every noble face looks calm, powdered, perfect. Every hand hides a secret. Fade down, low tone. You think about your dinner invitation tonight, an intimate gathering in one of Versailles' smaller salons. Candlelight, fine wine, witty conversation, and suddenly, all you can taste is arsenic and anxiety. The king laughs at something across the room. Montespan smiles too sweetly, and for the first time you realize the most dangerous seat in France isn't the throne. It's the one next to it. Because tonight's dinner party, someone won't live to see dessert. It's barely noon and you're already exhausted from surviving the morning. The gossip has mutated faster than a Parisian plague. New details, new names, and far too many people swearing they heard it firsthand. You try to slip out for some air, but in Versailles, even air has a guest list. A servant guides you through the hall of mirrors, your shoes clicking on the marble in perfect rhythm with the rumours. Everywhere you look, reflections, dozens of versions of you, powdered, polite, and pretending you're not terrified of the word arsenic. You step outside into the gardens, and it hits you. Versailles smells like money trying to hide rot. The fountains burble prettily, but the water's greenish and full of whispers. The hedges are trimmed so precisely they could probably recite the 10 Commandments from memory. But there's not a single bird in sight. Even nature avoids this place. You find your lunch group under a pavilion draped in silk. Courtiers chatter around a table overflowing with dishes that look beautiful, smell divine, and may or may not kill you. There's pigeon pie, glazed carp, and a stew that could double as a crime scene. Madame de Sévigné is already gossiping before she even sits down. She's writing everything down in those letters of hers. She'll outlive you all through ink alone. She leans over and says, "Did you hear? They found powder of succession again. Same recipe, same smell. Powder of succession, that's the polite term for get your inheritance faster dust. A blend of arsenic and ambition. You smile, pretending it's all so fascinatingly tragic, while sliding your plate a few inches away from the communal spoon. Who was it this time? You ask, purely for research. A banker's wife. She dropped mid-toast. They say she turned black around the mouth. Lovely mental image. You sip your wine and decide it's fine. No one would poison you. You're far too boring to inherit anything. But then someone new joins the conversation. A man in dark velvet, a priest or something close enough. His name's Guibourg. He's got the unsettling calm of someone who's either very holy or very damned. He speaks softly, eyes glittering. Poison is such a crude word, he says. I prefer transformation. You laugh nervously. He doesn't. The tension at the table thickens like gravy. Madame de Sévigné clears her throat, switches the topic to music, and everyone exhales at once. Later, you'll learn that same Guibourg allegedly performed black masses for Madame de Montespan, using chalices of blood and whispered prayers that made the devil sound like a confidant. But for now, he just eats bread with unsettling grace. You finish lunch as thunder gathers in the distance, even though the sky is clear. Versailles' weather runs on mood, not meteorology. You glance toward the palace, where servants scurry like ants. Word has it the king's in one of his tempers. Or worse, one of his sulks. Montespan hasn't appeared since breakfast. That's suspicious. When the king's mistress is quiet, the kingdom gets nervous. You find yourself drawn toward her apartments, curiosity outweighing good sense. The hallway smells faintly of burnt herbs and something metallic. Her lady-in-waiting sweeps past, clutching a small bottle wrapped in lace. You recognize that kind of bottle. It's not perfume. It's protection. Before we wade any deeper into intrigue, let's talk about what's actually on your plate. 17th century French cuisine was gorgeous and occasionally lethal. Dinner was an edible performance. You didn't eat to survive. You ate to show off. Picture this. Roasted swans decorated with their own feathers, pies with live birds that flew out when you sliced the crust, and fountains of wine flowing over sugar sculptures of gods and lovers. Every dish came drenched in butter, wine, and risk. Food wasn't just sustenance. It was political theatre. Sitting near the king at dinner could elevate your entire family. Being ignored could ruin your lineage. And because it was all so public, poison became the ultimate private act. Silverware wasn't just fancy, it was defensive technology. True silver tarnished on contact with many poisons. Courtiers watched for a flicker of black on a spoon the way modern people check for Wi-Fi signal. Salt, sugar, flour, all perfect disguises for arsenic. Even wine wasn't safe. Sweetened wine often came with something extra, sometimes powdered glass, sometimes mercury, occasionally the future you didn't want. So when you picture Versailles' glittering feasts, remember, every bite came with a side of fear. Half the court was hungry, the other half paranoid, and everyone burped in French. Now, back to the intrigue. You linger near Montespan's rooms, half hoping to hear nothing, half hoping to hear everything. Inside, voices murmur, hers sharp and commanding, and another, softer, feminine, lower class. The kind of voice that doesn't belong in a royal apartment unless it's selling something dangerous. You lean closer to the door. You catch a few words. Powder, blessing, fire. And then silence. The kind of silence that feels like it's waiting for you to breathe so it can pounce. You step back quickly, heart thudding. A servant appears at the end of the corridor, eyes wide, tray trembling. He sees you, blanches, and hurries away. You're starting to realize something. In Versailles, everyone's afraid. They've just learned to disguise it with lace. The rest of the afternoon unravels like embroidery pulled too tight. A friend from the kitchens tells you the police raided an apothecary in Paris last night. They found vials labelled inheritance, affection, and problem solved. The shopkeeper, missing. The rumour? She worked for Lavoisin. The name keeps coming up, like mould, like truth. You picture her, the fortune teller, the poisoner, the woman who holds the fate of nobles in her stained hands. She must know secrets that could topple half the court. You wonder if she's real, or if she's the collective hallucination of guilty people looking for someone else to blame. Then you remember, tomorrow you're due in Paris for a consultation. A friend arranged it. You weren't planning to go. Now you're not so sure. Because if the world's ending in a whisper of powder, maybe it's better to know how it'll end for you. The bell tolls for evening prayers, echoing through the marble halls like a reminder that God is technically still invited. You join the crowd heading toward the chapel, everyone pious and beautiful, everyone hiding sins under silk. The smell of incense mingles with the faint, bitter tang of alchemy. The priest drones about salvation, and all you can think about is lunch, and the priest with the devil's eyes. Outside, thunder finally breaks. You feel the first drop of rain, cool, cleansing, maybe poisonous. You can't tell anymore. Somewhere in Paris, Lavoisin is stirring something over a fire. Somewhere in Versailles, Montespan is praying to both heaven and hell. And somewhere very close to you, someone's pouring your wine for tonight's dinner. Evening in Versailles is when truth dresses up in velvet. By the time the sun dips below the fountains, the palace transforms into a stage. Candles flicker in every corridor, painting the marble with molten gold. Perfume hangs thick in the air, layers of jasmine, musk, and just a hint of deceit. You've changed clothes 3 times, not because you care about fashion, but because it's impossible to feel safe in anything that isn't armor. Your brocade glitters, but your stomach's a battlefield. Servants bustle around the grand salon, laying out dinner like an offering to gods who demand gossip instead of sacrifice. Crystal clinks, silver gleams, and laughter ripples through the air. Too loud, too forced. You know the sound of people pretending not to panic. This isn't just any dinner, it's a reunion of suspects. The guest list? Carefully curated chaos. Madame de Montespan, radiant but tense, her fan fluttering like a weapon. Madame de Maintenon, saintly and quiet, radiating "I told you so" energy, without saying a word. a few dukes, several marquises, and you, the most expendable person in the room. At the far end sits Louis XIV himself, golden, controlled, and, you swear, a little afraid. Not of war, not of rebellion, but of his own court. The first course arrives, turtle soup. The king raises his spoon and everyone imitates him like synchronized swimmers in lace. The moment he swallows, you exhale. No sudden collapses. Not yet. Then, from across the table, a woman coughs, sharp, dry, alarming. Everyone freezes. The orchestra misses a note. She laughs it off, claiming it's just the spice. But no one believes her. Servants rush to refill her glass. She waves them off, trembling. Her husband turns white. You glance toward Montespan. Her eyes narrow, watching. You glance at the king. He looks away. You glance at your own cup and realize you haven't touched it in 10 minutes. You put it down gently, like it's loaded. It might be. Conversation limps along. The topics: art, music, the glory of France, and anything that isn't poison. The orchestra plays louder to drown out unease. You catch snippets. The marquise confessed again. They say, the priest disappeared. The fortune teller's name was La Voisin. That name lands on the table like a dropped knife. Montespan's hand tightens around her goblet. Her diamonds glint dangerously. Louis XIV lifts his glass. To loyalty, he says. Everyone drinks. Everyone pretends they mean it. Later, as candles burn lower and shadows grow longer, the food keeps coming. Pheasant, candied violets, something that might once have been a fish. Every bite tastes like nerves. Montespan laughs a fraction too loud. Maintenon murmurs prayers under her breath. Someone at the far end whispers a joke about holy water with a kick, and 3 people excuse themselves immediately. You start counting the guests who look pale. There are too many. It's then you realize this isn't a dinner party. It's an interrogation disguised as one. Everyone's watching everyone else to see who twitches first. And the host is fear. When the rumours of poison finally spilled out of Versailles and into the streets, the king had no choice but to act. But justice in Louis XIV's France wasn't blind. It was blindfolded, drunk, and possibly on fire. Enter the chambre ardente, literally the burning court. It wasn't a metaphor. The courtroom was lit entirely by black candles, and the accused were often tortured until they said something interesting. If you were poor, you burned. If you were rich, you prayed, bribed, and occasionally retired to a convent. La Voisin was arrested in 1679, dragged through Paris in disgrace. Her house, that cosy little fortune-telling den, turned out to be a full-service murder factory. Love potions, poisons, black masses, even child sacrifices if the rumours are to be believed. The investigation dragged hundreds of names into the fire. Nobles, soldiers, priests, even Montespan's. For years, the court pretended not to hear her name whispered behind closed doors. The king ordered the records sealed to protect his reputation. and hers. Of the hundreds arrested, dozens were executed, and even more vanished discreetly. The affair became a lesson in royal hypocrisy. Murder was unforgivable, unless it was committed beautifully. Back at the table, dessert is served. Candied fruits, marzipan sculptures, and tiny silver cups of spiced wine. You hesitate again. By now, hesitation is your new religion. You lean toward your neighbour, a marquis who's sweating through his lace collar. "Do you think it's true?" you whisper. He blinks. "What?" "That the king's mistress summoned the devil to keep his love?" He smiles thinly. "My dear, in this court, that's practically a love language." You almost laugh. Almost. Then the coughing starts again. This time it's louder, sharper. The same woman from earlier, pale now, shaking. The servants rush to her side, but she waves them off, eyes wild. "No," she gasps, "it's not." And then she collapses. The room freezes. Forks hang mid-air. Montespan drops her fan. Maintenon whispers a prayer that sounds suspiciously like triumph. The king stands, face carved from marble. "Get the physician," he commands. But even the physician looks reluctant to touch her. You feel your heart hammering in your ribs. The orchestra stops. The only sound is the crackle of candle flames and the woman's laboured breath fading. Someone mutters, "Not again." Because this isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. They carry her out, limp and pale. The king ends dinner early. Everyone bows and flees, desperate to be seen leaving after him, but before anyone else dies. You linger, staring at the abandoned plates, the half-drunk cups, the crumbs of luxury that could double as evidence. Your reflection in the silver is warped, stretched. You barely recognize yourself, powdered, paranoid, and alive by accident. You wonder how long that will last. As you walk back through the dim corridor, the palace feels heavier. The laughter from earlier has curdled into whispers. You pass Montespan's door again. It's shut tight, but the faint smell of incense seeps out, laced with something darker. Somewhere inside, she's probably praying again. To God, to the devil, to anyone still listening. You think about La Voisin in her prison cell, the flames waiting for her confession. You think about the woman who fell tonight, about the king pretending he didn't notice, about the fact that poison doesn't always kill the body first. By the time you reach your chamber, the candles outside are guttering out. You pour yourself a drink, just water this time. Or at least you hope it's water. You raise it anyway. To survival, you whisper. You drink. It tastes fine. For now. You don't sleep that night. No one does. Versailles lies under a velvet shroud of fear, every window glowing faintly like the eye of a sleepless god. Somewhere down the corridor, someone's praying. Somewhere else, someone's packing. At dawn, a rumor races through the palace faster than incense smoke. La Voisin has been arrested. You hear it from a maid first. Of course you do. They know everything. She whispers it like she's afraid the walls might bite her for saying it aloud. They say she confessed. She breathes. To everything. To poisons. To the masses. Even. The babies. You freeze mid-step. Babies? Surely not. But then again, nothing shocks you anymore. You walk out onto the terrace overlooking the gardens. Morning mist rolls over the fountains, turning them into ghostly shapes. The air smells faintly of ashes, or imagination. La Voisin's arrest has torn a hole in Parisian society wide enough for half the nobility to fall through. She was everyone's dirty little secret, and now she's the state's favourite scapegoat. They say she was dragged from her home, her daughter, Marie, screaming behind her. The king's secret police seized every vial, every note, every scrap of evidence they could find. Some of it disappeared before it reached the court. Conveniently. And the worst part? Her clients' names, hundreds of them, written in her ledger. You can practically feel the collective panic seeping through the marble walls. For weeks, Versailles lives in suspended panic. No one drinks unless they've poured it themselves. No one touches another's plate. And no one, absolutely no one, speaks the name Montespan out loud. She still attends Mass. She still smiles. But the light in her eyes has changed. She's thinner, paler, and when the king looks at her now, it's like he's seeing a ghost he refuses to admit exists. You see her once, near the chapel. She's clutching her rosary like it's an anchor, the gold cross digging into her skin. Her confessor hovers nearby, muttering Latin. She glances at you for half a second, and in that instant, you know. She knows the world is ending. Not France, not even Versailles, just hers. Meanwhile, Paris burns with scandal. The Chambre Ardente works day and night, interrogating fortune-tellers, midwives, priests, and anyone who ever owned a suspicious candle. Torture is the new fashion. They pull confessions from every corner of the city. Women admit to selling powders, men to buying them, and everyone blames everyone else. It's an assembly line of damnation. La Voisin holds out longer than most. Weeks pass. She denies everything. Then, one day, she stops denying. They say she told the judge, "I gave them what they asked for. Love, death, and everything in between." She names names, not all, but enough to make the court tremble. She describes black masses, poisons, potions, charms. She never says Montespan's name, not directly. But she doesn't have to. The implication hangs in the air like smoke. The king orders the record sealed. He claims it's to protect the dignity of the crown. But everyone knows. It's to protect the woman he once loved. The day of La Voisin's execution is cold and grey. You're in Paris that morning. Don't ask why. You just are. Call it curiosity. Call it recklessness. The crowd gathers near the Place de Grève, a sea of faces pressed close, eager for justice or spectacle or both. She appears, bound and defiant, her skirts singed, her hair wild. She doesn't weep, she doesn't beg. Someone shouts, "Witch!" Another shouts, "Saint!" The flames catch fast, too fast. The wind shifts, and for a moment, her scream cuts through the air, sharp enough to scrape your bones. Then it's gone. When the smoke clears, what's left of La Voisin drifts upward, a ghost in powder and perfume. And just like that, the affair that almost swallowed France begins to fade, at least on paper. Back at Versailles, the king commands silence. He dissolves the chambre ardente, erases the records, and orders his court to forget. No more poison talk, no more fortune tellers, no more gossip about who asked the devil for favors. But you can't erase the smell of fear from velvet. Weeks turn to months. Montespan's star dims quietly. She still attends royal events, but the king avoids her gaze. Their conversations shrink to formalities. One morning, she simply leaves. For health reasons, they say. The convent door closes behind her with the finality of a guillotine. Her rival, Madame de Maintenon, steps into the light, gentle, pious, perfectly untouchable. She'll never replace Montespan's fire, but she'll keep the king's conscience warm. The court readjusts, as it always does. The fountains keep flowing. The mirrors keep reflecting. The perfume thickens to hide the rot. And you keep attending dinners, smiling, nodding, pretending not to remember the night someone died mid-toast. Years later, people will whisper that the affair of the poisons changed everything. But that's not quite true. It didn't change Versailles. It simply revealed it. The palace was always a gilded masquerade, beauty painted over sin, scent masking decay. The scandal only tore away the silk for a moment. Now, as you stroll through the gardens in the late afternoon light, the fountains sparkle again, the laughter returns, and the air smells of roses instead of ash. But you can't shake the feeling that something lingers beneath it all. An echo of that dinner, that fear, that quiet clink of poisoned glass. You pause by the water, watching your reflection ripple. You survived, yes, but in Versailles, survival isn't innocence. It's just another kind of guilt. You adjust your wig, straighten your lace, and turn toward the palace. The sun breaks through the clouds, bathing the golden facade in light so bright it almost hurts to look at. And for the briefest moment, you swear you see her, Montespan, standing in the window, lips curved in a smile that could still stop a king's heart. Then the breeze shifts. She's gone. Only the perfume remains. You survived the affair of the poisons. Barely. If you liked tonight's story of love, power, and slow, stylish murder, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. I'll save you a seat at the next scandal. Until then, Sleep well, and don't drink anything you didn't pour yourself.